welcome Pastor August.
Thank you for this honor to stand here. I know that, like myself, many of you are wondering how I was selected. I would have liked to have been a fly on the wall to hear the conversation. Nevertheless, we're here. And one of the things Mr. Crowell knows about me is that if he asked me to do anything to be a help and a support to this organization, if it's within my power, I'll do it. So I do this tonight. I do this tonight in that same spirit. To the officers and members of this esteemed chapter of this august organization and those who by your presence here tonight show your support for the same. It's indeed an honor to be asked to share a few remarks on the program, and my remarks will be brief. I must say that when I received the theme, Mr. Crowell, for this year's event, I experienced a bit of deja vu. In part because since the first of the year, my focus has been on the importance of securing success.
All right.
Your theme shines a light on this, in my opinion, often overlooked component of success. Success, however you define it, is not easily achieved. So it's alarming to me that more emphasis isn't placed on guarding it once it's attained. The world we live in is so forward-facing. So much emphasis is placed on growth and development, new ideas and technology, discovery and acquisition, that untold dollars and countless hours are allocated to ensure that our companies, churches, and organizations are on the proverbial cutting edge. Now, while I am just concerned as anyone about looking out the front door of opportunity, I believe that commensurate attention must be given to the back door to prevent that all that has been attained from seeping, leaking, and in some cases, flowing out. This organization, the NAACP, has a shining and glowing history, one that I have been familiar with firsthand. It was forged in the crucible of affliction. Great sacrifices have been made by people too numerous to mention, some of whom are in this very room. Their and your commitment to the advancement of people of color cannot be questioned. Icons like W.E.B. Du Bois, Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Booker T. Washington, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Medgar Evers, Ida B. Wells, Fannie Lou Hamer, and the like, gave inestimable degrees of blood, sweat, and tears to provide propulsion for a cause that they knew was just. Several on the list paid the ultimate price as they gave their lives because they could not, would not sit idly in the shadows of time that would become history and be numbered among the passive. The benefit of being here tonight is that we're able to see what they accomplished through the lens of the present. As we consider how much we have, we are forced to acknowledge the reality that in almost every case, they possessed little in the way of tangible assets. Largely what they had was not quantifiable in dollars and cents. It was intrinsic. Tonight, for the next few minutes, I want to engage us in a retrospective look that I hope will inspire the next season of enlightenment and innovation. The list of luminaries to which I alluded earlier concluded with the name Fannie Lou Hamer. Well known in the 60s for her organizational skill during Mississippi's Freedom Summer and for being the woman that President Lyndon B. Johnson so feared that he called an impromptu press conference to divert television coverage away from her testimony during the Democratic National Convention in 1964. She is our bridge tonight, our bridge of choice, over which we will cross to examine the resolve and grit that was so prevalent in those of that era and prior to it. Fannie Lou Hamer's trademark was that she used to use the hymns of the church and insert words that would focus those assembled on the goal at hand. In June of '63, Mrs. Hamer, along with other activists who were on their way home from Charleston, South Carolina, was arrested on some false charges and jailed. She was placed in the cell with two inmates who were given specific instructions to beat her with a blackjack as the police held her down. Instead of this near fatal beating diminishing her resolve, it stoked her fire and passion for the movement. As we continue to travel this bridge that is Fannie Lou Hamer's life, it leads us to the place of her death in 1977, a little place in Bolivar County, Mississippi, called Mound Bayou. It was founded as an independent black community in 1887 by former slaves who were led by Isaiah I.T. Montgomery. Mound Bayou was incorporated in 1898. In his article, Mound Bayou, Mississippi, an example of thrift and self-governance, by Booker T. Washington, chronicles Mound Bayou's inception and growth in the early 1900s to include, listen now, 13 stores, a number of small shops, a railroad station whose traffic amounted to $40,000 a year, 6 churches, 3 schools, a bank, 3 cotton gins, a telephone exchange, a weekly newspaper, and at that time was preparing to issue bonds for the construction of waterworks and the erection of a system of electric lighting. The truth of the matter is, as we sit here tonight, claiming to have made progress, when in the early 1900s, this was being done by our ancestors. The Bank of Mound Bayou, organized on March 8, 1904, it boasted earnings of 17% during its first 8 months of existence. In 1906, the bank paid a dividend of 16%, wouldn't you love to get that? And set aside a considerable sum as a surplus. To top it all off, the crime rate was almost zero. In a town full of black folk. Sounds almost utopian. So much so that, with your theme in mind, Biloxi Branch, NAACP, steadfast and immovable, I drove up to Mound Bayou this week to walk the hallowed grounds of such prodigious men and women, and to see for myself what had become of the place with such a rich history. The houses, the bank, City Hall are all relics of a bygone era that, were I not familiar with their story, hold no particular or special value. How could this happen? How could this once bustling, burgeoning municipality, filled with so much promise during a time rife with inexplicable challenges, be relegated to something less than a footnote in history today? Well, there are at least a few things. One was the Great Depression. The second was no doubt the adversarial posture of the majority culture, who loves to talk about how we want to be taken care of. When we begin to take care of ourselves too well, that's a problem. The third is the failure to bequeath the social, moral, and spiritual heritage that had been passed to them by their antecedents. And this is, as I round this corner toward home, what I want to focus on tonight. I believe that the greatest challenge facing companies, corporations, and churches is to remain relevant in a changing world. Great visions, ideas, and plans are dying on the vine. CEOs, presidents, and pastors who invest their entire lives to build something that in 1 or 2 generations is relegated to rubble because those to whom it was left didn't appreciate it, value it, or commit to it. I was struck a couple of years ago by the voice of God that reverberated in my spirit these words: "You will not know whether you have succeeded until you have been succeeded." You will not know whether you have succeeded until you have been succeeded. The truth of the matter is, if you don't build something that outlives you, you haven't built anything at all. We don't want to find ourselves to be the Milli Vanilli of the world. One-hit wonders, never to be heard from again. What do we do to stem the tide? The answer is found in the scriptures. I'm a preacher. You knew I had to go here. Moses told the children of Israel, when you get into the land of promise, it's going to be very important. I want you, when you cross Jordan, I want you to take some stones out of the river Jordan. I want you to take those stones with you everywhere you go. And when your children and your descendants ask you, what meaneth these stones? Tell them the story. Rehearse in their hearing how you got over. Tell them about your sacrifice. Tell them about your pain. Tell them about your God who made a way out of nowhere. Tell them about Pharaoh and how God dealt with him. It will encourage them when they face their own Pharaoh. It will encourage them when days get dark. He said, you got to tell them. He said, just can't tell them one time. He said, when you're sitting down at the table, tell them. When you're walking down the street, tell them. When you're lying down at night, tell them. When you get up in the morning, tell them. And I'm telling you, we got to tell this next generation. We got to tell them what we see, what we experience. Oh yeah, they're going to roll their eyes. Oh, there you go again, Grandma. Lord have mercy, if I hear this story one more time. But it may not be the first time, the 5th time, or the 50th time. But maybe the 51st time you tell them, something will click on the inside of them that will open their eyes to what they have inherited. To the great privilege that it is to be your descendant. To come from your loins. That they come from a rich ancestry. So that they can be proud of who they are. So that when they go to school, they won't want to besmirch the name Johnson, Thompson. Because that name has value. It has merit. You got to tell them the story. Now somebody said, well, kids don't want to hear that. You can't reach them. I want you to understand that somebody's influencing. Our young men right now walking around with pink shirts on, pink tennis shoes. Amen. It's good boots they're wearing. Y'all gonna be all right? grandchildren to be influenced by anybody I don't approve of. God gave them to me. I brought them home from the hospital, and all they knew was me. And so my job is to try to influence them with what I believe. Influence them with my love and my passion. Somebody said, well, I just believe in just leaving them alone and let them come to whatever conclusion. No, that's not going to happen in this world. Somebody's going to get a hold of them and persuade them. And you're going to look at somebody that you brought home from the hospital. They're going to look at you and tell you, you make me sick. And in that day, you will wish you would have influence.
Yeah. Come on, preacher. Come on, preacher.
I'm almost done.
Come on, preacher.
Was at a church growth seminar some years ago, and this man who was from Moline, Illinois, had been successful in growing a church. And the thing that made his church so peculiar and particularly interesting, particularly to the preachers, the pastors, was that he had several rich people in his church.
All right.
Not just regular people. People like y'all. And during the Q&A, this pastor raised his hand and said, I'm going to ask the question I know everybody want to ask. I said, what is it? How you get all them rich folk in your church? He said, well, normally, he said, you'd be surprised I get this question every time I teach. And normally I require people to come to Moline, Illinois on a Sunday morning. I require a pastor to give up a Sunday morning in his pulpit, pay his own expenses to come to Moline and sit there. Then I'll answer this question. He said, I feel good today. I'm just going to tell y'all. He said, I had a pastor to take me up on my challenge, flew to Moline. They told me he was there. I brought him in, sat him down in my study. He said, we went and we stood out just where you could look out into the congregation as they were gathering and being seated. And I told them, since you're on the front row, that's a city councilman. See right there? That's a doctor. That's a lawyer. That's a judge. That's the mayor. That's all right. Good. How you get them? Give me the secret, man. He said, well, okay. See that city councilman? We started picking him up in the projects when he was a little boy.
All right.
That judge, he was a troubled teen, and we got him out of juvenile detention. And he'll turn his life around. And one by one, this man articulated story after story. He said, some of you are probably like that pastor was right now. He looked at me and went away soft. Because he was not willing to make the investment to get the return. So, full disclosure, I practice what I preach.
All right.
I believe in this. And that's why today I was driving my own bus route. I'm a pastor, I'm a bishop. I have pastors who call me from all around the world. And I tell the members of our church who sometimes tell me, Bishop, you don't need to be driving this bus. I said, if you make me choose between pastoring y'all and driving this bus, I'm going to drive this bus. Because it is only through connecting to the next generation that we can ensure that what we have established will live on. It's only through taking time, now that you're retired and on the other side of things. Yeah, that's good to go to Tahiti and go to Fiji. But Big Mama, when you get back, get some little girls that ain't your grandbabies.
Yeah.
Bring them in your living room. And teach them how to sit right. Teach them that twerking is not an art form.
Come on.
19th August, my grandmother and mother, to impact the next generation. Because if I don't pour it out into somebody, it's going to stop with me. And then we'll be shaking our heads and scratching our heads talking about what in the world going on with these kids. What in the world happening? Lord have mercy. Somebody ought to do something. Now I know that at this point, you're feeling like, man, this is a big, big task. Who could ever do anything? I want to encourage you. Little fella walking down the beach was full of jellyfish. And he was picking them up one by one and throwing them back into the water. Man stopped and said, "Son, what you doing?" He said, "I'm rescuing jellyfish." Now you see all these jellyfish on this beach? There ain't no way you can make a difference. The boy didn't even stop. He reached down, picked one up, and threw it back. He said, "I just made a difference for that one." And in the true spirit of our Savior Jesus Christ, he said, if a man has 100 sheep and one go astray, he'll leave the 99 and go looking for that one. And if each of us would find one in our community, one in our neighborhood, one in our church, one in our family, we can make a difference for that one. And if we can make a difference, then we can maintain the momentum that we gained. We would be steadfast, unmovable, not losing ground, but steadfast. I feel like preaching here. Unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. As I go to proceed, I got to give you the facts. The truth of the matter is, Moses was a great leader. But if he hadn't had Joshua, all that he did those 40 years would have come to nothing. Elijah had Elisha. Paul had Timothy. Jesus had the 12 disciples. My question is, who do you have?